In the noise of modern life, you may find yourself constantly moving, yet rarely arriving anywhere that feels meaningful. Screens light up your mornings before the sun does. Notifications interrupt your thoughts before they fully form, and the pace of the world pulls you in directions you never consciously chose. It is a quiet exhaustion that settles deep, the kind that comes not from doing too much, but from being scattered across too many things that do not truly matter. In today's world of constant stimulation, phones, fears, social pressures, and endless obligations, attention is constantly pulled in every direction. Yet beneath this noise lies an essential invitation. Living with purpose requires saying no to what distracts you. Stoic philosophy endures because it speaks to the timeless human quest for clarity, intention, and inner peace. Today, we reconnect with that wisdom and rediscover what it truly means to live purposefully. In moments when life feels scattered, the teachings of Stoic philosophy offer you something quietly powerful. A reminder that purpose is not found in the noise, but in your ability to return to what matters. This ancient tradition is more than a set of ideas preserved in old manuscripts. It is a living guide, a steady companion for anyone navigating the fast rhythm of the modern world. It invites you to step back, breathe, and rediscover the strength that already exists within you. From here, we turn to the heart of this philosophy, where calm narration meets ancient wisdom. Stoicism whispers that peace does not come from eliminating chaos, because chaos is an inseparable part of life. It comes instead from learning to master how you respond to it in a world defined by distractions. This is a radical message. It suggests that your well-being is not determined by the storms around you, but by the steadiness you cultivate inside. Now imagine how this idea unfolds in daily life. Each morning, you wake up with only so much time, energy, and attention. Yet countless small interruptions quietly steal pieces of your day. The urge to check your phone, the worry about how others perceive you, the subtle pressure to multitask until your mind feels thin and stretched. Stoicism teaches that these seemingly insignificant moments, what do you say yes to, what you allow into your inner space, end up shaping the quality of your entire life. But there's another layer beneath this. When you accept distractions without awareness, you drift far from your deeper purpose. You begin to live by reaction rather than intention. The Stoics remind you that saying no to distractions is not an act of resistance against the world, but an act of devotion toward your own inner clarity. Living with purpose is built from these small decisions, repeated gently but consistently each day. From here, we explore what makes Stoicism feel so enduring. For thousands of years, its teachings have traveled across cultures, across wars and empires, across generations of seekers who all face the same question. How do I live well? Its longevity is not an accident. It survives because it speaks to something universally you're longing, to feel rooted within yourself. Even when the world around you shifts and shakes. Now imagine the early philosophers who shaped these ideas. They lived in eras scarred by political turmoil, uncertainty, and constant change. Yet they looked inward and found a truth that remains remarkably relevant. Calm is not the absence of struggle, but the ability to stand steady within it. This truth gave them strength, and it continues to offer strength to you. But there's more to uncover. Why does this ancient philosophy still resonate with modern minds? Perhaps because the distractions of today, though wrapped in technology and speed, are not so different from the concerns of centuries past. Human beings have always wrestled with fear, desire, comparison, and the pull of the external world. The Stoics understood this timeless struggle. Their teachings feel like a mirror held up to your own experience, reflecting both your vulnerability and your potential. From here, we move into deeper reflection. What does your life look like when you drift away from purpose? You may feel overwhelmed, as though time is slipping through your hands. You may react instead of responding, or move from one task to another without grounding. Stoicism offers a different path. It teaches that when you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your life. Each moment of mindfulness becomes a small act of liberation. Now, imagine standing at the threshold of such a life. You begin to realize that saying no is not about deprivation, but about creating space for meaning, for focus, for becoming the person you want to be. The Stoics saw purpose not as a distant dream, but as the natural result of disciplined attention. When you choose what to engage with, You choose the direction of your inner world. But there's another question quietly rising beneath the surface. If purpose is shaped by what you allow into your mind, then how do you decide what deserves your attention? This is where Stoic wisdom becomes deeply personal. It asks you not to adopt its ideas blindly, but to turn inward and observe yourself with honesty. What drains you? What strengthens you? What aligns with the life you want to build? These questions form the foundation of living with intention. From here, we return to the reflective heart of this part. Consider the remarkable endurance of Stoicism. What keeps it alive is not complexity, but clarity. It cuts through the noise of the world and reminds you of something simple yet profound. You always have a choice. Even when the world pressures you, distracts you, or overwhelms you, you hold the power to direct your attention with care. Now imagine walking through your day with this awareness. Each decision becomes a quiet affirmation of your values. Each moment of mindfulness becomes a step toward peace. You begin to notice how often distractions pull you away from yourself, and how liberating it feels to gently decline them. Purpose becomes less of a concept and more of a lived experience, woven through your actions, your doubts, and your presence. But there's one final question to sit with. In a world full of noise, what does your inner voice sound like? When the distractions fade, what remains? Stoicism invites you to listen closely, to rediscover the steady rhythm beneath the turbulence. It calls you to build a life that is anchored not in chaos, but in clarity. From here, we prepare to continue the journey deeper into the origins of this philosophy, deeper into the wisdom that has guided generations before you. But for now, pause with these reflections. Ask yourself, what am I saying yes to? What am I allowing to shape my inner world? And who could I become if I learned to say no with courage and intention? This is where your exploration truly begins. To understand why living with purpose means learning to say no to distractions is such a central message of Stoicism, we must trace the philosophy back to its beginning, time when the world was marked by uncertainty, war, and constant instability. Stoicism did not arise in an era of comfort. It emerged in a world where people had to confront fear, loss, and impermanence every single day. From that environment of disorder, the Stoics forged a way of thinking that did not promise to change the world outside, but instead transformed how a person could endure, understand, and rise above it. Stoicism was born in the 3rd century BC, during a period in which the Mediterranean world was shaped and reshaped by political turmoil. Kingdoms expanded and collapsed. Leaders rose and fell, and societies lived with the awareness that life could shift overnight. The future was fragile. There were no safety nets, no guarantees, and no certainty. Yet this harsh reality became the soil in which Stoic wisdom took root. Instead of teaching people how to avoid chaos, Stoicism taught them how to stand firmly within it. The core insight of Stoicism is simple but profound. You cannot control the external world, but you can control your internal world. The world may be unpredictable, but your responses do not have to be. You may lose possessions, status, or even loved ones, but you do not have to lose your character, your clarity, or your purpose. That is why, even in its earliest form, Stoicism presented itself not as a shield against suffering, but as a compass that keeps one oriented toward what truly matters. Understanding this foundation allows us to see why saying no to distractions is such an essential part of living purposefully. In a world where everything can shift without warning, anything that scatters your attention or weakens your focus becomes dangerous. A distracted mind is easily swayed. A disciplined mind is almost indestructible. The same is true today, though the distractions may look different. Ancient people battled war, famine, and political upheaval. Modern people battle overstimulation, endless notifications, and a culture that constantly pulls attention outward. Both forms of chaos, however, challenge the same thing: the ability to master your own mind. This is why looking back at the great Stoic thinkers helps illuminate how deeply this theme runs through the philosophy. Each Stoic, in their own context, emphasized the central role of focus, self-control, and purposeful living. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, is one of the clearest examples, writing privately in his meditations often late at night while commanding armies or wrestling with the weight of governing an empire. He reminded himself of a simple truth: A meaningful life depends on refusing to be pulled away by trivial things. His writings are full of calls to attention, intention, and simplicity. He continually instructed himself to concentrate on what truly lay before him, and to disregard the noise and distractions that clouded judgment. His life, filled with pressure and responsibility, showed that saying no was not avoidance, it was alignment. Even a ruler with limitless obligations knew that a scattered mind leads to a scattered life. Epictetus approached the same idea from an entirely different background. Once a slave, he discovered Stoicism through personal struggle rather than political power. His life taught him that while he could not control his circumstances, he could fully control his mind. He insisted that the key to freedom is recognizing what is within your control and ignoring what is not. That single insight becomes a powerful lesson about distractions. Most distractions come from chasing things that lie outside our power. When we invest energy into external approval, uncontrollable events, or the ever-changing opinions of others, we surrender our peace. Epictetus believed that clarity comes not from adding more to life, but from removing what does not belong. Saying no becomes a path to inner liberation. Interestingly, Stoicism is not the only philosophy that arrived at this truth. When we look across cultures, we find striking parallels. Lao Tzu, in ancient China, spoke about living in harmony with the natural order, letting go of unnecessary desires, and simplifying life to its essence. The Buddha taught the importance of mindfulness, detachment, and awareness, reminding us that much of human suffering arises from being carried away by craving, distraction, and unexamined impulses. Though separated by geography and tradition, these thinkers shared a similar message. Inner freedom is impossible without discipline of the mind. A life without purpose is the inevitable result of a mind without control. This universality reveals why Stoicism has endured for thousands of years. Its insights remain relevant not because they belong to the past, but because they speak to something timeless in human nature. Every generation confronts uncertainty. Every person struggles with fear, desire, and distraction. Every life requires choices about what to focus on and what to let go. Stoicism gives language and, more importantly, practices for navigating those choices. The enduring appeal of Stoicism lies in its practicality. It does not require retreats into isolation or rigid rituals. It invites people to look inward, face their own thinking honestly, and make decisions aligned with their values. It encourages purpose, clarity, and resilience by teaching the simplest and hardest discipline of all, the discipline of attention. Distractions are not just external forces. They are internal habits. They are the small, daily choices that accumulate and eventually shape a person, the entire life. Understanding the origins of Stoicism is essential because its lessons come from real experience, not abstract theory. Stoics were leaders, slaves, soldiers, and ordinary people navigating chaotic lives. Their warnings against distraction target what truly undermines a meaningful life, and their teachings on purpose emphasize discipline, reflection, and courage. Living with purpose means learning to say no to distractions is not a modern slogan but a timeless principle. Across centuries, the human struggle remains the same: to live intentionally amid noise. Recognizing Stoicism's roots helps us appreciate its wisdom and prepares us to apply it in today's fast-paced world. Stoic philosophy becomes meaningful only when it steps out of the realm of theory and enters the fabric of real life. Ideas, no matter how profound, cannot transform anyone until they are practiced, tested, and lived. This is why the Stoics constantly reminded themselves and their students that wisdom is not measured by what you know, but by what you do with what you know. Understanding purpose is one thing. Living with purpose is another. And living with purpose requires daily choices that reinforce clarity, discipline, and focus. It demands the courage to say no, the patience to remain steady, and the willingness to examine your own mind with honesty. When Stoicism moves from theory to daily practice, it transforms from abstract concepts into a lived way of life. The key question becomes, how do we apply living with purpose? Means learning to say no to distractions in everyday life. In today's workplace filled with deadlines, pressure, In constant noise, this principle is vital. Living purposefully at work means focusing on what truly matters instead of reacting to every task, message, or expectation. Many get lost, not from lack of skill, but from fear, comparison, or insecurity. Stoicism teaches that meaningful work arises from clarity, concentrating on what you can control, your effort, presence, and quality of action, acting not from fear or approval, but from commitment to excellence in each moment. When you learn to say no to distractions at work, whether that's excessive multitasking, worrying about the opinions of others, or getting lost in constant notifications, reclaim your ability to think deeply and act intentionally. A purposeful worker is not someone who rushes through tasks, but someone who chooses their actions with care. Instead of reacting to every minor interruption, they protect their attention as one of their most valuable resources. They understand that a scattered mind leads to scattered results. By removing distractions, even small ones, they create the space where meaningful work can grow. The same principle extends into personal relationships. A Stoic approach to relationships does not mean being detached, emotionless, or distant. Instead, it means being present, stable, and grounded. When you say no to emotional impulsiveness, unnecessary conflicts, or the habit of reacting without reflection, you make space for deeper connection and understanding. Stoicism encourages calm communication, the kind that arises from listening rather than defending, from curiosity rather than assumption. A person who lives with purpose in their relationships does not allow gossip, jealousy, resentment, or insecurity to guide their actions. They choose to respond rather than react. They take responsibility for their emotions, instead of blaming others for how they feel. They strengthen bonds not by controlling others, but by mastering their own behavior. When distractions like anger, comparison, or pride no longer dictate your interactions, relationships become a place of growth and authenticity rather than conflict and confusion. But perhaps the most important application of Stoicism lies within the inner world, a space where thoughts, fears, desires, and beliefs live. Modern life often leaves people feeling disconnected from themselves, overwhelmed by loneliness, or lost in the constant search for something more. Yet Stoicism teaches that inner peace is not found outside. It is cultivated from within. Learning to say no to internal distractions is just as important as resisting external ones. Internal distractions can take many forms. Negative overthinking, rumination, the need for constant stimulation, or the inability to sit quietly with your own thoughts. Stoicism invites you to confront these tendencies with patience and awareness. It encourages you to sit with discomfort rather than escape it, to explore your emotions rather than suppress them, and to build inner strength through reflection and gratitude. When you embrace stillness, instead of running from it, you begin to hear your mind more clearly. You learn what truly matters to you. You become grounded. Turning Stoic ideas into daily habits is where transformation truly begins. Small practices, repeated consistently, reshape your perception and behavior. A few minutes of morning silence sets the tone for the rest of the day, helping you step into the world with intention instead of reacting automatically. Journaling clarifies your thoughts, uncovers the patterns that distract you, and strengthens your ability to remain centered. Choosing one meaningful task per day prevents overwhelm, encourages focus, and ensures that your energy flows into what matters most. Learning to say no becomes a skillagenter but powerful boundary that protects your purpose. When you practice these simple habits, you gradually build a mental environment in which purpose can thrive. You learn to observe your mind without judgment, recognize your impulses without being controlled by them, and act from a place of clarity rather than confusion. Each small act of discipline becomes a step away from distraction and a step toward a more intentional life. The beauty of Stoicism lies in its simplicity. It does not demand perfection. It does not require dramatic changes. It asks only for awareness and consistent effort. Every day offers a new opportunity to choose what aligns with your purpose and to let go of what does not. You do not need grand gestures to live with purpose. You need small, deliberate actions that accumulate over time. By bringing Stoic principles into your daily life, You cultivate a sense of direction and stability in a world that often feels overwhelming. You begin to experience the quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. You become more resilient, more focused, and more capable of navigating challenges without losing yourself. Purpose becomes not just an idea, but a lived reality expressed through the choices you make, the boundaries you set, and the distractions you refuse to entertain. Ultimately, turning purpose into daily action is an ongoing journey. It requires practice, reflection, and patience. But each step brings you closer to the person you aspire to be. And as you learn to say no to distractions, both external and internal, you make space for the life that truly belongs to you. As we step into this final exploration of Stoic philosophy, it becomes clear that every idea we have encountered, discipline, attention, and clarity leads us to one central truth shared across centuries. True strength begins within. From the writings of Marcus Aurelius to the reflections of modern thinkers like Ryan Holiday, Viktor Frankl, and Jonathan Haidt, the message remains astonishingly consistent. Human beings find meaning not by controlling the world, but by mastering the inner landscape of thought, intention, and focus. When you learn to direct your attention with purpose, you begin to shape your life from the inside out. Across history, many have faced chaos, uncertainty, or suffering that could easily have fractured the mind. Yet, those who embraced this inner mastery discovered a quiet power that allowed them to stand firmly amid storms. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during plague and war, yet he reminded himself each morning that external events do not control the mind unless we allow them to. Viktor Frankl endured unimaginable hardship, yet he found meaning in the smallest acts of choice. Ryan Holiday writes about discipline and clarity not as lofty ideals but as practices anyone can cultivate. Their shared insight is simple. Mastery of the self is the foundation of a purposeful life. From here, we turn to the heart of that mastery, or ability to choose what deserves your time and attention. In a world overflowing with noise, urgency, and distraction, the act of focusing becomes almost sacred. Each moment of clarity becomes an act of devotion to your own purpose. When you choose deliberately where to place your energy, you begin to separate the meaningful from the trivial. You recognize that not everything deserves a reaction. Not every invitation deserves acceptance, and not every thought deserves belief. This is where focus transforms into inner strength. Now imagine yourself stepping back from the noise of ordinary life. The constant alerts, the opinions of strangers, the rush of obligations. Imagine creating a small distance between you and the world, even for a breath. In that quiet pause, you can sense what truly matters. You can feel the presence of your own values. The mind softens. Tension sharpens, the heart steadies. Clarity arrives, not through force, but through stillness. But there's another layer to this journey. Mastering focus is not simply about avoiding distraction. It is about discovering what pulls you forward. It is about aligning your choices with what you believe to be meaningful. When you choose with intention, you strengthen your character. Each decision chips away at confusion and shapes a clearer path ahead. Each moment of attention becomes a declaration of who you are becoming. This is why the greatest challenge is not the external chaos, it is the internal. Pull toward the easy, the familiar, and the immediate. Distractions will always exist. The question is whether you allow them to scatter your mind or whether you use them as reminders to return to yourself. When you master this return, you cultivate resilience. When life becomes loud, you respond with calm. When pressures rise, you stand anchored in your values. Inner strength grows in quiet, steady layers. Now imagine how this mastery appears in your everyday life. You begin to notice the small habits that once drained your attention: mindless scrolling, emotional reactivity, or the temptation to fill every silence. Instead of letting these patterns control you, you observe them with patience. You choose differently. You practice restraint, not as self-denial but as self-respect. Each boundary you set becomes a form of self. Each moment of silence becomes a place to recharge. And each act of purposeful attention becomes an affirmation of the life you want to live. To anchor your journey, start with reflection. Ask, what is pulling my focus away from the life I truly want? Distractions may be subtle habits, tolerated fears, or outdated patterns. Naming them is the first step. to our reclaiming purpose. Next, ask, who do I genuinely want to become, not by others' expectations, but by my own sense of meaning? This helps clarify the values that matter most, such as integrity, compassion, curiosity, or presence. Finally, ask, what is truly valuable in my life? Understanding this distinction between noise and nourishment allows you to focus intentionally, invest your energy wisely, and live deliberately rather than being scattered by every demand or impulse. But there's another layer to this moment of reflection. In a world filled with constant stimulation, embracing silence becomes an act of quiet rebellion. When you choose stillness over noise, you reclaim a power that modern life often steals. Silence becomes a mirror in which the mind can see itself clearly. It becomes a place where purpose can breathe. And it becomes a reminder that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. From here, we turn to the deeper truth at the core of Stoic philosophy. Mastering focus is mastering freedom. When your attention is steady, you are no longer controlled by impulses or overwhelmed by circumstances. You become the author of your actions rather than the reactor to your environment. You discover that purpose is not a distant destination but a daily practice. It is found in each moment of intention, each choice of clarity, each refusal to be pulled away from yourself. In this space of calm awareness, you begin to feel a profound sense of inner strength, quiet, grounded, steady. It is the strength of knowing that you can choose your response. It is the strength of focusing on what you can control. It is the strength of living according to your values, even when the world tries to pull you off course. Mastering focus and inner strength isn't about perfection, but returning to yourself repeatedly. It means choosing purpose over distraction, clarity over noise, and presence over rush. Each small choice shapes a life aligned with your values and the wisdom of ancient philosophy. In a chaotic world, the most powerful resistance is a calm, purposeful mind, steady, grounded, and entirely your own. Living with purpose begins with the choices we make each day. Every time you say no to distractions, to unnecessary noise, or to impulses that steal your peace, you take a step toward a life aligned with meaning. Stoic philosophy reminds us that this is not about avoiding life's challenges or seeking escape. It is about cultivating awareness, clarity, and presence, even amid chaos. True freedom comes from mastering your mind, from choosing where to place your attention, and from living intentionally in every moment. Take a moment now to reflect. What distractions could you release today? What small action could bring you closer to the life you truly want? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to continue exploring philosophy and self-mastery, and let this be a gentle reminder that the journey of owning your life starts with one conscious, present moment. It could begin right now.